Let's stop with the quote, QB is injured. It should impact their ranking. Let's stop with that. Because while I acknowledge that quarterback is the most important position on the team, I don't know a soul that's going to push back on that. That's the most important position on the team. It's the hardest position to play. It's the position that will most likely contribute to wins or losses more than any other position. I understand all of that. But what we don't understand is what Tate Rodemaker is capable of. And what we also need to do is we need to acknowledge that the team and the team's accomplishments should be weighed heavier than the presence of one individual. And I have a million different examples of guys that have come in off the bench. There hasn't been much of a drop-off whatsoever. And in some cases, rare cases I might add, there's actually been improvement at the quarterback spot. Let's go back to 2014. In the preseason, starting quarterback for the Buckeyes was injured. No big deal. We're going to put in this freshman named J.T. Barrett and see how he does. Well, what did J.T. Barrett do that year? Well, he led Ohio State to a 10-1 record before he was injured against Michigan. Man, Ohio State's done now. There's no way they're going to be able to overcome his absence. They've already lost one quarterback. Now they're going to have to go to quarterback number 3. How the heck are they going to be able to do that? Well, in goes Cardale Jones, does well enough to get the win against Michigan, and then he goes into the game against Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game. And they won that game like 175-3 or 175-0. I don't remember exactly what the final score was. I think it was 59-0 if I remember correctly. It didn't have an impact on who Ohio State was. Yeah, they tweaked. Yeah, they adjusted. Yeah, they made some changes. Cardale's skill set was a little different from that of J.T. Barrett. But it didn't matter. He was perfectly fine. And while the offense might have looked different with Braxton Miller, the offense might have looked different with J.T. Barrett, it might have looked different with Cardale Jones, but they didn't drop off. He goes on to beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl to get to the national championship, and he goes into the national championship and has a great game, taking care of the football, and they beat Oregon for the title. That's an example in the last 9 years in which, oh, well, you know what? The quarterback's out. Why? That was a year too. Remember, we had Baylor and TCU that were sitting there with only one loss at their resume, and the conversation there heading into Selection Day was Ohio State versus Baylor versus TCU. Who should get in? Well, they ended up going with Ohio State, even in spite of their quarterback not being available, and it didn't matter. They ended up winning the whole dang thing to begin with. There's about 10 other examples I can give you too. What about Tua Tagovailoa? Tua Tagovailoa gets thrust into the national championship game at halftime with Bama trailing and struggling offensively. Jalen Hurts, a non-factor there in the first half against the Bulldogs there in 2017 title game. Tua goes in, they start lighting it up with vertical passing. Next thing you know, the offense doesn't skip a beat and they win the title. 2nd and 26, touchdown Devontae Smith, walk-off winner. Title number 5 for Nick Saban. Didn't have an impact whatsoever. How about this one? Stetson Bennett. Who did he replace? Well, JT Daniels got a little banged up there in 2021. Started the season, was supposed to be the guy. JT Daniels gets a little beat up. In goes Stetson Bennett. He's running around making plays. And next thing you know, he gets hot, gets better, and gets better. And he goes on to win however many games in a row to cap off a college career that would have never happened if not for an injury to JT Daniels. Dylan Gabriel went in for an injured Mackenzie Milton and has now become one of the most productive players in the history of college football. Caleb Williams was thrust in for a highly ineffective Spencer Rattler. How about this year? Noah Fafita for Arizona, who's won 5 consecutive games. And it was probably their most dominant performance to date. Noah Fafita goes in, goes 23 of 30, 253, a couple touchdowns, no picks. And they destroy Utah. They're up 28-0 in the first half by itself. So when Jaden DeLaura got hurt, a lot of people saying, yeah, Arizona's done. They got no shot. Well, they put in Fafita, and the offense has actually gotten better. I'll even use one more example. John Paddock. How many people are familiar with him? Probably not a lot. But he's starting quarterback of Illinois right now. Luke Altmaier gets hurt. He goes in, comes off the bench. 3 for 3, 85 yards and a touchdown to beat Minnesota. Follows it the following week in another impressive victory for 507. Yeah, he lost his last week to Iowa, but the passing attack has taken off way more so than it was prior to when Luke Altmaier was a starting guy. So we can totally put to bed this whole, well, their quarterback's not available, it should impact their ranking. The team is bigger than one individual. Always. Always. So to penalize the other 84 scholarship players on the Florida State roster, and by doubting the other 84 players on the Florida State roster, to me is a misguided approach. Like, we should reward the team for what they've done, not for what they might look like without their starting quarterback. It's the most irritating argument that people make. Oh, well, we should drop Florida State. Maybe an undefeated Florida State gets left out in favor of a one-loss Pac-12 title champion. No, that shouldn't be the way it is. Maybe Florida State gets jumped by a 12-1 Texas because they're without Jordan Travis. No, under no circumstances. If Florida State runs the table at 13-0, they should be in. I don't care what the circumstances are with the health of their outstanding starting quarterback, Jordan Travis.
All right, I just got to ask you a question because you kind of hit it towards the end. But what if Florida State squeaks by? I think you referenced Ohio State in 2014. They beat Wisconsin 59-0. That showed the committee that, boy, it's a plug and play offense. You know, that's what it is. What if Florida State squeaks by Florida, barely beats Louisville, and while Texas dominates Texas Tech and then blows out whoever's in the Big 12 championship? You don't think the committee will look at that and make that question?
I'm not saying they would. I'm just saying they should. If Florida State is undefeated, they're in the playoff. If you are an undefeated Power 5 champion, there should be no argument. Unless there's 5 undefeated Power 5 champions, there should be no argument. It's simple as that. It's not like they didn't play anybody either. I mean, Florida State's played good quality competition. If they beat Louisville at that point will have been potentially an 11-1 football team. It's pretty dang good. I don't care if you win by 1 or 100. It's pretty dang good. Like, Texas lost a game. Like, if Texas wanted to get in over Florida State, hey, guess what? Don't lose to Oklahoma and give up a 75-yard drive with 1 minute and 12 seconds left to lose the game. Don't get stuffed to the goal line. Don't turn it over 3 times. I'm sorry. Florida State didn't do those things. Like, they won the games that were in front of them. And while we all get enamored with the eye test to know, well, the game control and, the margin of victory. No, did you win or did you lose? And if Florida State won all their games, they should be in. Over a team that did not win all their games. It's as simple as that. And I could understand the argument a little better if Florida State played Liberty's schedule, but they didn't. They played a Power 5 conference schedule and challenged themselves out of conference by beating an LSU team that's currently ranked number 15 in the College Football Playoff Committee rankings. So, no, I don't think Texas should jump them. If Florida State loses, then that opens the door for Texas. But that's up to how Florida State handles it. They're in control of their own destiny the way I see it.